Hi folks, let me ask you a question today. Do you treat God like Santa Claus? When life is tough or you want something good to happen, you find your prayer life soaring. You're leaning into God, begging for his help, asking for him to step in. And then when you find yourself in a season of life where life is generally going well, do you forget all about him? This is God's complaint with Israel in our reading today. Chapter 10 begins with God speaking about the fact that the more prosperous Israel become, the further from God they get. Rather than recognize that any and every good thing comes from God, rather than living a life of dependence on him, they start believing that their success is just down to them. They don't need God. They can make it on their own. They think they're progressing well, but God reminds them in chapter 10 verse 9 that actually they've made no progress at all. They're going backwards. But it's never too late with God. God still wants to get them back. Such is his unfathomable love. He tells them in verse 12 that if they take some small steps to get right with God, then love, not selfishness, will blossom. If they recognize that their hearts have become hard to God and choose to return to him, then won't he shower them with blessing after blessing, his righteousness restoring them and us into relationship. But they won't do it. How frustrating must that be? God is the one who's cared for them all these years. God is the one who's watched over them. God is the one who's led them down the generations with kindness and love, but they treat him like Santa Claus. They just want him for what he gives them. They don't want him. Powerful words in chapter 11 verse 9 where God becomes very vulnerable. His heart is broken and yet he still feels compassion for this wayward people. And so he refuses to destroy them, but will wait and woo and hope that they'll come to their senses and return to him. Let's be careful today that we don't treat God like Santa Claus. Let's choose to seek God and who he is over and above what he might do for us. Let's embrace him, because when we do, we find what our soul longs for: love, hope, peace, comfort, and so much more when we find our rest in him.